Welcome to Resilient Minds 365, where we discuss the resilient stories of entrepreneurs, professionals, and students with mental illnesses to encourage you to strive, thrive, and live in abundance. I'm your host, Cleoni Crawford. Welcome to Resilient Minds 365, where we discuss the resilient stories of entrepreneurs, professionals, and students with mental illnesses to encourage you to strive, thrive, and live in abundance. I'm your host, Cleoni Crawford. Today, guys, we have a special guest with us. We have Mischelle Saunders-Gottsch with us. Who is Mischelle Saunders-Gottsch? Well, she is the CEO and founder of Altered Stories Ministry and a podcast host of the Altered Stories show. She is a wife, a speaker, a ministry and business leader, and is passionate about helping women to share their God stories to help women overcome their struggles. So pretty much that's who Mischelle is. But we're going to learn a whole lot more about Mischelle. So first of all, I have my first question. Thank you for coming on our show, Mischelle. I hope you're having a wonderful day.
Oh, thank you. I'm having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So Mischelle, tell us a little bit more about what you do with Altered Stories, the Altered Stories Ministry, and your podcast, and anything else that you do in your career.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of Altered Stories Ministry, and we're a faith-based nonprofit that's located in Overland Park, Kansas, and we serve women. That's kind of what we do there in terms of helping women share their stories, their specific God stories, so women around the world can hear them. So we're a storytelling nonprofit, and we focus on the story of the woman. And we also have a blog. And then we also do, through my services, support for other nonprofits who want to storytell. And so helping them along the way with their storytelling, whether it's coaching them through how to tell their story or helping them get their story out there through our podcasting services. I'm the chief storyteller host of the Altered Stories show, which is the brand, and it's a platform where we have the stories that we share that go out for others to hear. In addition, I also do some consulting on the side, and those consulting services help nonprofits develop. In addition to that, I do some program project management, change management kind of work in that space. So there's a lot there that I do. I'm working on writing a book and hope to launch that at the end of 2022 as well.
Awesome. I love it. So with that said, we are going to, you're just going to dive right into the interview in regards to the mental health piece and also about your story. So the first question I have for you is, tell us a little bit more about your, I guess it was your previous mental health diagnosis. When were you diagnosed, and what was it?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with, I would call it anxiety, depression. Mm-hmm. And that was back in my early 40s. And that came about as a result of the trauma that I experienced having come out of a child as a cult and in my early child years. And as a result of having gone through some emotional sexual abuse and the trauma that comes out of that started to surface because I never really worked through what I had experienced coming out of that kind of trauma and just focused on my career. And I started noticing a lot of things that were transpiring in my mental health. I was running from anything that involved any kind of control. I was having a difficult time just with my anxiousness all the time.
Yes.
And that caused some issues. There was broken relationships that I started, having. I was struggling with intimacy and trust. So all of that kind of permeated as I started getting into my early 40s, which was probably about, close to maybe 30 years after I had gone through that trauma.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about your mental health story of resilience. How did you overcome? What did you have to go through? Tell us about the trauma how did you get involved in the cults in the first place?
Yeah.
Talk to us about, just walk us through that whole journey.
Okay, I will. I was brought into the cult through my mom, who at that point in time had innocently walked into this group. And she was looking for community and a way to build community. My dad was in the Air Force, and she was, and then got out and raised a family. But she moved around a lot with my dad, and it was difficult, I think, to try to find, community and friends. But she ran into a group of people that she really connected with. And they introduced her to this leader who was very charismatic and very welcoming. And, just she seemed very comfortable at that point in time because this other group of friends that she had been part of this. And she thought, oh, this is a really good way for me to raise my children in faith around a group and a community that she felt, treated her like family. Well, long story short, and I was 7, and I got out of this cult by God's grace at the age of 12. But at that point in time, when we first started, it didn't seem all that out of balance. But as time progressed, there was more controls, there was more radical, I guess you would call it thinking. There were group sessions that were very unhealthy, involving, sexual abuse in different ways and normalizing that. And so it was, a journey that, started, like I said, very innocently, and then more controls. And we weren't allowed to, there's more isolation, and we could only hang out with those that were in this group. And, there was humiliation for those that didn't always agree. There was criticism. There were kids turning on their parents. There's, a lot of, I would consider it like just unhealthy people that were being drawn into that group. And what I mean by that, unhealthy people that were extremely vulnerable and had issues in their lives, too. And so there was, just a lot of that. And then we weren't allowed to celebrate holidays. Most holidays, we weren't allowed to watch TV. We had to wear hair a certain way. We had to wear clothing modestly. I mean, there's just more and more controls that were imposed. And unfortunately, I was a child, and, my mom, whatever my mother chose, I had to conform to in the way that I, needed to be obedient. However, I learned very quickly how I could get support outside of what I was existing in. And there were others that were struggling like me that I leaned on within the group. And I rebelled in other areas, and being one way there and trying to, have favor and look like I was doing all the right things. And then outside of that, when I was out in a place where I could exist, in a normal school setting, or, I would talk to my teachers or talk to my counselors, and they were kind of monitoring this and being aware of some things that, was going on. But long story short, this man was exposed. There were people who left the cult because of some of what was transpiring, and he was exposed, and that came down, and my mother had to go to my father and share the details because he was serving in, the Air Force, and he was away a lot. He was very good about allowing my mom to choose where she wanted to, go to church or to be affiliated with, a group of people that, were faith oriented. And he kind of had his lifestyle and life, and, he let her do that thing. He just wasn't all about it. But anyway, it turned out that unfortunately, my dad had to come back from his deployment in Germany to the United States, and they had to go to court because my brother had made the choice not to stay home. He kept running away, couldn't handle it, and all the stuff that was being imposed, and he left the home and became, my parents lost custody essentially of him. But my mother made the choice to, when this was all brought out in the media, to leave. And it was a very freeing thing for me when she made that choice, although it was too late for my brother, who had so many trust issues, I think, at that point. But me, thankfully, I was able to try to resume some normalcy, try to heal and move forward with my family. And I also had a baby sister at home at that time. So, thankfully, right in those teen years, those early teen years, my parents, decided collectively to work to keep their marriage going and to disassociate and move ahead. But there was an incredible amount of just shame that I went through, and the trauma of what I saw at such a young age, and the exposure, to just abuse, whether it was, like I said, mental abuse, or it was physical, sexual type abuse, I would call it. There was, I would call it, not harassment, but it was, it was definitely violation. It was a violation. So that, I hope, gives your audience a depiction of this cult and kind of my experience, even though it went on for a good 5 years, it was definitely a very hard journey that I went through. I felt like a prisoner, I really did. And I was very embarrassed by what, this cult required of how we should live our lifestyle in a world where, people, don't typically, meet in groups, hidden groups, or, have to wear certain clothing and, different lifestyles. So that made it difficult at my age, because that's an age where you want to be accepted a lot.
Right, right. So tell us, when you came out of the cult, and then in 2002, when you discovered that you had depression and anxiety, how did that come about? And then how did you, because from what I understand, you no longer have anxiety or depression. You no longer suffer from this. So what changed? What happened?
Well, I think first and foremost, my faith had a big impact on how I was able to overcome a lot of that. Although when I came out of this group, I wanted nothing to do with Christians or anyone that wanted to talk to me about God or any of that. It took me quite a while, and God had to really show up in my life through people and through just how he personally, helped me overcome my trust issues and, just the unhealthiness of pushing myself and performing and, all those in unhealthy areas, because, I was striving and I was running away, and, I was trying to not have to deal with what I was, so I suppressed a lot of things. And so I had to reach out to others, like I said. I mean, I did have to go through a stress management counseling journey, and I had about 3.5 months of that that I went through with a counselor. And she was very, very good. She understood cults and understood the I guess the mental health issues of those that come out of that kind of abuse. And so, it took me a while to really talk through, my trauma, understand it, process it, understand truly that I'd been a victim, and that it just had to work through, journaling, telling my story. I think that is really what helped me a lot, is when I broke free and was able to tell her. I mean, I think that was the first time I really ever told anyone what I really went through, because nobody could understand it. And I had, grown up and went to college and did all these other things and was in my career. And, people wouldn't have even imagined that I had been through that kind of trauma in my background. So it took time, for me to really I had to slow down. And there were situations that came into my life that made me to have to deal with it.
Right.
So thankfully there are counselors, and there are, other people that come alongside you and have been through something similar, or, understand. I had a pastor, I had women's groups, that I was part of or served in, and we did breakouts and we talked through things. So, the whole journey of that involved a lot of other people being part of it. And to the trust issue, and then the rebuilding of the relationship with my mom. And, that in itself was a whole nother different dynamic. And I had a lot of rage and anger. And God had to put me into an organization that was faith-based. And I had to learn to love Christians again, because I worked there. And, even though I was going through the journey and accepting those Christians, that at that point in time, when I was in that cult, I was like, these people are so weird. I don't want anything to do with them. They have to have these crutches. I mean, it just gave me a really bad taste in my mouth of what Christianity and all of that is about, So it took me a while to be able to begin to trust people, trust Christians, trust, that God had my back, to really begin to trust my mom. And, I still had a difficulty with that one. I'll be honest with you. It took me a long time. And even at times I would flash back. So that's the thing, even though we're healed, we think, and we've done a lot of work, sometimes those wounds, it takes time, and they can still come up. And so you have to continue working and doing the work. And I'm still a person that doesn't like anyone controlling me. I like to make my own decisions. I like to drive my own destiny. I'm still weary of other spiritual leaders. I'm very careful. I'm very discerning. I do a lot of research. And it takes me a while. I'm kind of guarded. And I think that's a personal protection, having come out of what I did come out of, because I was a young person going through it. And I didn't have the controls in my life that others do when you get older and you're an adult. So hopefully that gives you and your audience kind of some idea of the journey of healing for me.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds very traumatic. You went through a lot. But I'm glad that you were able to overcome and you were able to be resilient despite it. So my next question is, tell us some more about some of the things you did to overcome or bounce back from your low points. Can you list some resources that were applicable? Like, you can answer that question.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did, of course, prayer. I did a lot of prayer. I was in groups through my church, that actually worked with those that had come out of trauma, in their early years. And so, I did get involved there. I did a lot of women's Bible studies because of me and my faith, and really leaning into those Bible studies that are Bible studies from women who come out of hard things, sexual abuse. I went to conferences. Beth Moore, her Bible studies really helped and resonated with me a lot. Joyce Meyer, who came out of extreme sexual abuse too in her younger years, she's another one in the Christian circle. I also read a lot of self-help books, did a lot of self-reflection myself, and worked on getting myself healthy. I put myself on no dating at people at that point for a while to get healthy in my life. And those were just some areas. I really tried to get myself physically healthy, keep my health, and stay, in a good place there as well, and nutritionally. So I do believe it's a holistic, and I believe it's all the way through.
Mhm.
So, my recommendation for people that are going through this is, oh, and counselors, I kept in contact with therapists, Christian therapists, that I could continue to lean into when I was struggling or having difficulty. And so all those resources worked and helped me a lot. And then, of course, as I built Altered Stories Ministry, and I've started sharing my personal story out there, and I'm helping other women who've come through very difficult situations, circumstances, trauma, tell their story. And I think there's a bit of recovery that helps me too as I go through that. So that all those things, it's a journey. It is a journey for
Definitely.
sure.
Definitely. I mean, it's very cathartic when you're able to help other people's by hearing other people's stories. It's quite cathartic. It's helpful to you as well.
It
So
is.
yeah, very helpful. That's awesome. And what are 3 things you wish you had available when you were at your lowest point?
Yeah. My dad was gone a lot. He was deployed to Germany during that time for 2 years with 1 month break. And there wasn't FaceTimes, any of what we have now to be able to keep us in touch with those we love when they're not there.
Mhm.
And so it would have been wonderful to have my dad more engaged and more, on the home front, because I believe if he would have really understood the impact and what was transpiring as a result of what my mom had gotten herself into,
Mhm.
I do think that would have made a difference. So having access to my dad would have been really, really helpful. I would say too, because I was so young, I was only in second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth, sixth. There, the counselors, I would have appreciated more support there from the school and the teachers, especially when they started seeing a digression of my grades and my behaviors. Having gone through that, it would have been nice to have had that available, so, and maybe another family member. Unfortunately, my parents did not live close to family, but having access to, another family member that maybe could have intervened,
Right.
or tried to do an intervention there.
Okay. Yeah, those are good. Those are good. I can definitely
Mhm.
see why that would have been helpful.
Yes.
Sure, for sure. So, what words of hope can you give to our listeners? What would you tell them?
Well, I would tell them that no matter what you're going through or what you've come out of, there's hope
Mhm.
and there's healing. And, for me personally, um, I, have a strong faith in God now, but He came through for me, and He encouraged me through the support and help of so many in my life, through people and through circumstances and through other wins. I mean, he brought blessing out of this horrible, chaotic struggle. And so understand that there are people that do care for you. Understand that there are communities that you can involve yourself with. Understand there's a God in heaven, although, albeit a lot of people look at me like, are you crazy? But God, I mean, although we all live in a broken world and we all have difficulty and struggles, I do believe that God cares and he'll be with you through those struggles. And it may not be apparent right away, but, you know, I would just say, you know, don't give up. Know that people care. There's a lot of resources for you. Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed to go to someone. I mean, I personally would love to help anyone who has a struggle right now and feels like they'd have no place to go. And there are a lot of people that can, and resources, you know, but if you're being, you know, abused in ways that's not healthy for you and you can't get out as a, you know, then I would say reach out to all resources that you have in your community too. But pray to God for help and for guidance, and lean into your faith, because that will keep you strong and keep you going. So know that if I can be a person who came out of the trauma I did and really wanted nothing to do with God or Christians, and today I'm leading a ministry and helping women heal, and I have a relationship with God, although there's still difficulty in my life. Know that if I'm a person that can, you know, live and go forward in my life in a successful way in my faith and in helping others, you can too. So I just want to make sure that's very clear.
Cool, cool. Very, very powerful and touching words for our listeners. Definitely. I love it.
Thank
So,
you.
You're welcome. So with that said, we are going to switch topics a little bit. And as you can see behind me, there's a book, and the book is called The Music of My Life. So that will lead me to talk about music therapy. So my question is, what type of music do you like?
Oh my goodness. Music is therapeutic, by the way. It's so powerful. And I will say that did help me get through. Music always does help me, no matter what. I love praise and worship music. I love Carrie Joe. I love King and Country. I like Lauren Daigle. Those are Christian contemporary. I love gospel praise and worship too. I mean, that is awesome. But I also am a person that likes R&B and jazz, and you know, I do like a little country. But there's something about music, and I love that you have that book. I should have said music. Music did make a difference and does all the time in all my healing. I've always turned up music or listened to music or put it on, you know, streaming it or whatever. So critical. I got to get a hold of that book.
Well, like we can talk about it after. It's on Amazon.
Yay!
Yay! Yeah. So, with that said, my next question to you is: if you were to think of one song that best describes your journey, what would it be and why?
There is a song called "The Recovery."
The Recovery.
And yeah, and there's also Mandisa has a song on Overcomer. And I think it's, you know, just because it's who I am, you know, and the music and the words, and you know, I am an overcomer, and everyone can be an overcomer. And you know, we all have to go through struggles, but it's how we go through them.
Yes.
But I do think Mandisa has a really cool song out there. and I listened to a Pandora station called The Overcomer too.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome, awesome. All right, so Mischelle, so how can we stay in touch with you? What are your social media handles?
Well, I would love you to. Instagram, I'm out there. I have a public image. It's Gigi, Mischelle Renee, because I am a Gigi. And then I have a Facebook public image page, Mischelle Renee Saunders-Gottsch, and then my own personal page. I'm on LinkedIn, Mischelle Saunders-Gottsch. You can go to my website for Altered Stories Ministry, www.alteredstories.org. You can get in touch with me all those ways. And then also look for my book that I hope to write that will help women heal through what I'll be sharing coming out at the end of 2022. But I can't tell you the story line yet and any of that because I'll be working with a publisher. So
awesome, awesome. Well, Mischelle, I want to thank you very much for being a guest on our show. Definitely very touching story. I love it. And with that said, to all you resilient minds out there, until next time, please subscribe to us on all our platforms and don't forget to rate the show and leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts. Also join the community of resilient minds and sign up for our monthly newsletter at www.cleonicrawford.com. Be sure to grab a copy of my books, The Music of My Life, on all Amazon marketplaces to get to know me better. And if you can think of one person that will receive value from today's show or connect with Mischelle's testimonial, please share it with them. Feel free to take a screenshot of this week's episode of the podcast and tag us on Instagram. You can tag myself at Only Cleoni and Resilient Minds 365 and today's guest, Mischelle. Mischelle. And remember, mental health is not a death sentence. Despite your illness, you can strive, thrive, and live a life of abundance. Until next time, I'm Cleoni Crawford, and I'm signing off.